let's talk about bushings. And with these bushings, before I ordered them, I called Andy and I talked to Andy at RacerTech. And he told me not to be surprised if I got these bushings and they was too tight to go in the hole. He said don't drive them in, because if you drive them in, you're going to make the ID a little bit smaller also. And if you make it smaller, then the pin ain't going to want to slide in. It's going to be too tight. You can see there, it wedged up. I've now got this thing in a 1/4 inch a little better. Now with the bushing out, the pin fits fine. See how that fits? It's a snug fit, but I mean it fits good. Now, Andy told me that the plier specs are pretty loose. Now, and what that means is the ID of these holes is not the same on every bike. From one bike to another, it could be a little bit different. So what they did is they made their bushings to fit on the loose end of the spec. That means they're designed to fit the larger inside diameters. Well, if you take these bushings and you fit them in an arm and just drive them in an arm that's a little bit smaller diameter, just a few thousandths is going to make a big deal, because a few thousandths is going to compress the outside diameter, which is also going to compress the inside diameter, and it's going to compress on your pin. You're going to have to drive the pin in. If you got to drive it in, then it's not going to work right, because it's going to be too tight and it's going to build up friction. And with them a little bit tight, what I want to do first is I want to take some 80 grit sandpaper. I want to sand the outside diameter. And by doing that, all I'm going to do is sit here and spin this bushing. And when I get done with the 80 grit, I got some 180 grit, then I got some 400 grit. The 80 grit is going to take the most off the outside diameter, and the 180 and the 400, all that's going to do is smooth it up just to make sure that I've got a nice clean surface. When you're sanding these down, you want to make sure that you take off the same amount, the full length of the bushing. You don't want to take off more here than you do here, because you're still going to have a tight spot. You want to take off the full length of the bushing, that way you've got a good snug fit and you're using the whole bushing instead of just part of it. Now for my bushings, I got a bucket of water here. It's a little soap and water solution. All that does is just help get all the contaminants out of the bushing, instead of when I slide it in the arm, I don't want the contaminants to go in the arm. That's done getting it quite a bit better, but it needs a little more. It's still a little bit too tight. Now with the bushing in, you're going to want to be able to slide that pin in like that. You don't want it to be tight. See how good that works? As you can see here, my bushings are a little bit thick. And because of them being thick, my sleeve is a little bit short. It's not going to stick out past the bushing on both sides. It's only sticking out just a fraction on one side. Now, to solve this issue, you don't want to install it like this, because if you install it like this, you're going to be tightening up on the bushing. You're not going to be tightening up on the sleeve, on the pivot pin. So what you're going to do is take a little off the outside diameter, the length, overall length of the bushing. That way they seat a little bit tighter, and it allows that pin to stick out a little bit past the bushing. Now, in order to make this length, this width, just a little bit narrower, what I want to do is take me a piece of this 80 grit sandpaper, lay it flat on the floor, then I want to take my bushing and rub it flat on the surface of the sandpaper. And every so often you want to take and check it, because you don't want to cut too much off. You want to take and check it and see if you've got enough cut off. Now with that bushing cut down, there's still not enough. This sleeve here is sticking out a little past, but this sleeve here ain't. So we're going to have to take a little off this side. Try to keep the arms centered. Take the same amount off of both bushings. And again, the reason I'm doing this is because the pinch points on the frame, you want them to pinch on the sleeve. You don't want them to pinch on the bushing. If they pinch on the bushing, it's going to cause more heat, and it could cause a squeaking issue. I believe I got her that time. She's sticking out just slightly past the bushing on both ends. So now we're done with that arm.